dear Eva, it is I, your beloved Fiora. And I was thinking about your suggestion the other day that we bring in a big Jordan stud to cuckold me, and I think that it's something that I could get into.
Scheiße. Oh. Heil. Der Wind, Wiesentag. Gut, mein Gebässe sehen. Der Führer ist tot. Und der Rote Armee Hafen hat Muchtenacke. Nein, was leid. Der Raffen der Kommunisten, Bastarden, der Peischen der Michelsweisheit. Bis dann der Kriegsverbrechen befen alles. Das weiße Leben Huten. Das Krieg kann nur umbringen und Leben lecken. Sie vergangen. Gottverdammt! Was sind da nicht das? Ich bin als der Leifes der Nazis sein, der Kriegesfeind. Archaeology wie Seifen der Kloisten. Das ist der was. Der Runke, bis weisert worden, wenn ich so die Breve der Kriegen der Blüten.
Laka noć, Getorbo Geterbone Archaeology. Gatorukoso, Garatamki Neteria Frateria.
Mein Seid!
Archaeology is the search for fact, not truth. If it's truth you're interested in, there are plenty of YouTube channels that teach philosophy. But what does an archaeologist do when the person writing their checks is only interested in searching for a certain kind of fact? Let's engage in a thought experiment for a second. Let's say that you are an archaeologist during a time when there's renewed public interest in your research. New university chairs are getting endowed by the score. New museums are being opened, and old ones are getting more funding. Archaeological sites are transforming into beautiful open-air tourist attractions for anyone to enjoy. Multiple documentaries are getting produced to raise awareness about important local history. All you have to do, Mr. or Mrs. Archaeologist, to take part in all of this history buff's dream, is to sell your soul to the devil. Well, you've probably already guessed by now that this is exactly the conundrum that the German archaeological community found themselves in during the regime of Adolf Hitler. Hitler was the best thing that happened to prehistoric European archaeology. But, and it may shock you to hear this, he didn't do it out of the goodness of his heart. Believe it or not, Adolf Hitler had something to prove.
Das habe erfunden der internationalen Juden. Ihnen ein deutsches Reich und tausendjährige gedenkt an diesen Platten.
Pretty much. All sorts of seemingly respectable people set out to help Hitler substantiate that claim. Doctors, lawyers, historians, religious leaders, but one of Hitler's stooges took it a step further. Heinrich Himmler, Reichsfuhrer of the SS. Himmler thought the best way to prove the Aryan race's superiority was to look to the distant past. He believed that every good idea humanity had ever come up with originated with a racially pure prehistoric German civilization. That the cultures of Greece, Rome, Egypt, Carthage, and Mesopotamia were civilized by waves of Germanic immigration, giving rise to such wonderful things as writing, pyramids, aqueducts, and man-boy love.
Das ist Basiskampf. Mange junge Liebe. Ist ein verteidigender Griechen.
Вертолетне, Bukubarantarenish. Zafakrezen obervenisi, Daresi, Zamijinisid. In Tormato Sovietsky, Vadrano Sadraki.
So the Nazis poured a fortune into archaeological research, and for the most part, German academics took their blood money. Some were die-hard Nazis who were only too happy to help. Others, who refused to toe the party line, retired early and were replaced by loyal men. But the majority, they were simply too meek to speak out. They just took the Nazi money and taught what they were told to teach in the universities. Pretty soon, Nazi biases started getting confirmed. Himmler decided to form a secret society called the Ahnenerbe. Called the Ahnenerbe. Ahnen meaning forefathers, Erbe meaning heritage. This is their logo, which is way cooler than it has any right to be. They even had club rings with the logo on them. I hate how much I like these rings. God damn it, Nazis. Why are you so fashionable, you evil fucking bastards? So Himmler sent these archaeologists to historic sites all around the world, and they returned with some interesting conclusions. As you probably know, a key tenet of Nazi ideology was to provide Lebensraum, or living space, for the German people. It's essentially why the Wehrmacht decided to conquer Europe. So conveniently, Himmler's archaeologists found ancient Germanic artifacts in places like Poland, France, and Czechoslovakia.
Expansion is hyphen in Land Boys, with typen in Garagenmarkt. In Deutschens Volk, was heißt das Bienenwand dort?
Say what you will about the Nazis, but they weren't in the habit of smelling their own farts. That is to say, they were shameless liars, and they knew it. Except for the whole thing about the Jewish conspiracy to take over the world. They were very sincere about that. They really, really hated the Jews. For some reason, people in the comment sections of my videos often assume that I'm Jewish. No idea why. Most high-ranking Nazis thought that Himmler's quest for ancient artifacts was a little ridiculous. Sure, they appreciated the value of archaeology as a propaganda tool, but they didn't really think Himmler was going to find Atlantis or the Holy Grail. But Himmler did. Big time. He became obsessed with discovering as much about this prehistoric Aryan civilization as he possibly could. This imaginary civilization, mind you. He wanted to learn about its religion, its language, its culture, and apply it to modern-day Europe. His eventual goal was to replace Christianity with a completely twisted version of Germanic paganism. Even the Führer thought this was stupid. Albert Speer, the Nazi architect, claimed Hitler once told him,
Warum machen wir die ganze Welt darauf aufmerksam, dass wir keine Vergangenheit haben? Es ist schön stimmig, dass die Römer große Gebäude errichteten, als unsere Verfahren nach Lemoten lebten. Jetzt beginnt Himmler, diese Dörfer auf Lemoten zu graben und begeistert über jeden Tod und an jeder Steinart, die er findet, wird stohlen wirklich unser Bester geben und über diese Vergangenheit schweigen nur kann. Heutigen Römer müssen über diese Entschuldigung lachen.
In 1945, Hitler killed himself. And lots of other Nazis died. It was a good year. But for every Nazi who faced justice, 100 more melted back into the German population. And thousands of Mitlaufer, or fence-sitters, people who knew Nazi crimes were happening but just decided to turn a blind eye, they remained in Germany and continued with their lives and careers, including the archaeologists and academics who had benefited directly from Nazi funding and public interest. And for the rest of the 20th century, many senior archaeologists in Germany were men whose careers had been made by the Nazi regime. Even today, if you go to the website of the German Archaeological Institute and click on the History tab, you'll just find a bland list of the directors of the institute and a graphic telling you when the various research facilities were built. No mention at all of the Nazi years. None of these archaeologists actually took part in the atrocities of the Holocaust. But what they did do was feed the propaganda machine that got millions of people on board with an ideology that championed genocide as the only solution to the world's problems. And like the Nazi scientists who went on to work on the American space program, most of these senior archaeologists never had to face the consequences of their actions. Instead, they prospered.
Don't worry, everybody. Uncle Sam's here. My luck of God. The Americans. Oh, hey, Mr. Soviet, my best friend. For another few minutes. What seems to be the problem? There is a Nazi back there and I have almost got him. He is in my sights. A Nazi? Come on out, Mr. Nazi.
Is that the Americans?
Yeah. Yeah, it's us. Come on out.
Oh, danke Gott. Oh, I surrender. I surrender. Oh, say, can you see? Oh, say, can you see? Hello, hello, America, USA, USA, I surrender.
You're a funny guy, Mr. Nazi, a real funny guy. Come on, come with me. Fun's over. Come on.
So I was thinking something with rockets, maybe. Just any high-paying science job if you have one. You said you were an archaeologist. Shh.
We'll find a place for you. Come on.
Ah, das ist gut, danke, danke. And I would like to live somewhere racially pure. I was thinking New Hampshire.
Oh, New Hampshire's beautiful. You're gonna love it. Come on.
Let me just take off my creepy SS gloves and my creepy SS hat, and I will come quietly. I am ready.
See ya, Mr. Soviet. Sooner rather than later, I hope.
So a bunch of Nazis got away with it. So what? Is there a point to this lecture? Well, yeah, there is. And once again, it's this. Facts are in pretty short supply these days.
Is it possible the ancients built their pyramids to tap into the same electromagnetic fields as extraterrestrials use to power their crafts?
So how many people do you think were brought over from Africa on slave ships? Because that definitely happened.
I don't believe it.
What do you mean you don't believe it?
I don't believe that story.
That's the date of the foundation of Göbekli Tepe. It's very set, very clear, absolutely founded, exactly the date that Plato gives for the ending of Atlantis.
Every person has to be ready to look at these ancient texts and ancient monuments from our perspective.
Now listen, I'm not trying to compare Georgios Tsoukalos to Heinrich Himmler. The people on those clips were not Nazis, not even close, and their ideas aren't nearly as dangerous. But conspiracy theories about ancient civilizations have not been around forever. They largely came about in the 19th century, with the rise of scientific racism. As colonial treasure hunting slowly morphed into modern-day archaeology, European adventurers sought to explain monumental ancient structures that were built in countries that these Europeans considered primitive. They reasoned that only white men were robust, intelligent, and civilized enough to build such wonders, and they skewed the evidence to fit their theories. This was famously part of the origin of Mormonism. Joseph Smith thought that the Native American mounds near his house in upstate New York couldn't possibly have been built by natives, and instead were built by Hebrews who had come to America in biblical times. In many ways, Nazi eugenics were the culmination of centuries of theories about scientific racism. And while that theory largely died with Hitler, it's never been easier to be taken in by comforting fictions with absolutely no basis in evidence. Not too much of a stretch to go from ancient Aryans to ancient aliens.
People truly believe that the technology to build pyramids wasn't of this earth because at the time the pyramids were being made.
So it was Europeans coming to Africa, seeing an amazing civilization that they could not imagine an African build, and they must then invoke some other cause that enabled them to build it. Excuse me, you know.
And historically, academics have not been immune to this. It's healthy to be open-minded and doubt what the experts are telling you. Considering the crackpot theories reputable German archaeologists believed just 70 years ago, it's safe to say that in 100 or 1,000 years, people will be laughing at all of our crackpot theories. But beware of the man with the stake in the outcome. If somebody's built their whole career trying to prove that aliens built the pyramids, then they may be unable or unwilling to consider the merits of contrary evidence.
First of all, we should just say, for people who don't know, you have been at the front of the line for decades, talking about these lost civilizations, you exposed me to a lot of these, what were at the time controversial ideas that have now been substantiated.
Well, as early as 1933, I proposed that civilization originated with a genetically pure Aryan super race. Since then, the Führer has sent out legions of his most loyal archaeologists to find evidence to substantiate the claim.
Is there any effort underway to try to uncover more evidence?
Oh, Reichsführer Himmler has insisted upon it. You know, he is a great guy, that Himmler. He recently invited me to Wewelsburg, his creepy castle in the mountains.
What do you got, Jamie?
Inducted me into a secret club, gave us all these rings. Aren't they snappy? Loves this thing. Yeah, we did weird sex things and pagan rituals well into the night. It was a great time.
Traditional academics and traditional historians that are trying to, I guess as archaeologists, that we're trying to resist, they've let go a lot of that.
Yeah. We ensured their compliance.
I had a thought once while I was under the influence.